All right, let's cut the crap and dive right into this shit today. Brands, man. You know those things companies are always trying to shove down our throats. We got a ton of research here, but we're going to keep it real, starting with, the surprisingly wild history of this whole branding bullshit.
It's a crazy ride for sure. You wouldn't believe how far back this goes. We're talking ancient Egypt, man. Branding livestock, even slaves.
Seriously. Branding people. That's fucked up. Even for back then.
Yeah, it's a dark chapter, but it shows something important about branding. Right from the start, it was about, differentiation and ownership. Even before we had mass production and all that.
So, like, this is my cow, not yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I get it. But how did we go from, branding cows to Nike and Coca-Cola?
It's a long road, a long and winding road. Let's fast forward a bit to ancient Greece and Rome. Branding went from those rough markings on animals to, fancier symbols on stuff people used every day, especially pottery.
Pottery. Seriously. Who gives a shit about pottery?
Hold on, this is important. In a world where most people couldn't read those marks on pottery, were like, vital info, early labels telling people where it came from and sometimes even hinting at the quality.
So like a signature on some ugly vase.
Well, kind of. The Romans had this fancy term for it, titulus pictus. These were inscriptions on amphorae. You know those big jars they used to store stuff? They told you the origin, the destination, sometimes even bragged about how good the product was.
Okay, so now I'm picturing some Roman dude chiseling best olive oil ever onto his jar.
Pretty much. And they even had early versions of what we might call celebrity endorsement.
Wait a minute. Celebrities in ancient Rome? You mean like gladiators hawking chariots or something?
Not exactly gladiators, but there's this fish sauce merchant we know of in Pompeii. His name is Ambricius Scaurus. This guy had mosaics in his house, showing off amphorae with his brand stamped on them and boasts about the quality. Like the flour of garum made of the mackerel, a product of Scaurus.
Fish sauce? Are you kidding me? Was that like a luxury item back then?
Garum was a big deal, man. But the point is, this Scaurus guy knew the power of branding. Attaching his name and rep to his product. It could totally change how people saw it, and you know what's more important? Boost sales.
So even back then, people were falling for this branding crap.
Hey, it's not all crap. At its heart, branding is about communicating information, creating trust and reliability. Think about it. Don't you feel better buying something from a brand you know and trust?
Yeah, sometimes. But let's be real. It feels like brands are just manipulating us. Trying to convince us we need shit we don't.
You're not wrong. There's definitely some manipulation going on, especially these days. But before we get into all that, let's look at how brands evolved with the rise of mass production and trademarks back in the 19th century.
All right, bring on the 19th century. What happened then?
The Industrial Revolution changed everything, man. Suddenly factories were pumping out products like crazy, and that's when the need to differentiate all that stuff in a crowded marketplace really kicked in.
Yeah, makes sense. If everything looks the same, how do you stand out?
Exactly. And that's where trademarks and modern branding really come into play. Take the Bass Brewery, for example. These British beer guys. They slapped a red triangle on their barrels way back before 1855. And guess what? That red triangle became the UK's first registered trademark in 1876.
So basically they invented the logo.
In a way, yeah. And from there, it just exploded. We see the rise of iconic brands like Twinings Tea, their logo with the lion crest, been around since 1787, and Lyle's Golden Syrup. Their packaging is almost exactly the same as it was way back in 1885. These guys were in it for the long haul.
Damn, those are some old school brands. It makes you wonder how they've lasted so long, doesn't it?
It does. And a big part of that comes down to their ability to adapt and evolve their branding while sticking to their core values. They figured out how to stay relevant without losing their identity.
All right, so we've got ancient Egyptians branding cows, Roman fish sauce guys bragging on their mosaics, and British breweries inventing the logo. What about the actual parts of a brand? What makes a brand besides just a name and a logo?
That's a great question. Building a successful brand is like putting together a puzzle. You've got the name, the logo, sure, but there are other things that aren't so obvious that contribute to how we see and connect with a brand. It's about creating a whole vibe, a feeling.
Like what? Spill the beans.
Think about the shape of a Coca-Cola bottle, or that trademark Robin's Egg Blue that Tiffany & Co. uses. Those are visual cues that instantly trigger brand recognition, but it goes beyond just what you see.
You mean like those jingles? Or the annoying ads that get stuck in your head?
Yeah, exactly. Think about the NBC chimes, or even scents. The smell of Chanel No. 5 is so iconic that it's actually trademarked.
Wait, you can trademark a smell. That's wild. So brands are basically trying to take over all our senses.
In a way, yeah. They're trying to create this multi-sensory experience that makes their brand stick in your mind, makes it stand out.
Okay, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. It's not just about slapping a logo on something. It's about creating a whole feeling
And it's experience.
around a product.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important part of branding, brand awareness.
Brand awareness. Sounds pretty straightforward to me.
It might seem that way, but there are some nuances to it that are really important for marketers. Think about it. How do you even become aware of a brand in the first place?
Well, you see it advertised everywhere, right? Billboards, social media, those damn pop-up ads.
That's one way, but there are actually two main types of brand awareness: recall and recognition.
Hold on. Recognition is different from recall. How the hell does that work?
It's pretty simple, really. Think about Kleenex. When I say facial tissue, what do you immediately think of?
Kleenex, I guess. So what?
That's brand recall. You remember the brand name without any help. Now imagine you're in the supermarket staring at a wall of facial tissues. You see a bunch of brands, and bam, Kleenex jumps out at you. That's brand recognition. Seeing the packaging triggers your memory.
Oh, okay, I see. So recall is like top-of-mind awareness, and recognition is more like, oh yeah, I've seen that before.
You got it. And both are important for building a successful brand. But get ready for this. Branding has gone way beyond just physical products.
You mean like branding people, influencers, and all that crap?
That's part of it, yeah. We have personal branding, where individuals cultivate a specific image or persona. We have employer branding, where companies try to attract and retain talent by projecting a certain workplace culture. And believe it or not, we even have nation branding.
Nation branding.
Yeah.
You're telling me countries are trying to be brands now?
Exactly. Countries try to project a certain image to the world, often through tourism campaigns, cultural exports, even political messaging. Think about how Made in Germany makes you think of quality engineering, or how Italian fashion evokes a sense of luxury and style.
All right, so now we've got countries trying to do brands. The world's gone mad.
Maybe. But it shows how widespread branding has become in the modern world. And we haven't even gotten to all the different branding strategies that companies use.
Okay, let's get to the juicy stuff. What kind of crazy branding strategies are we talking about?
That's where our deep dive continues. Buckle up, because we're going to explore the wild world of multi-product branding, individual branding challenger brands, even the crazy idea of no brand branding.
Yeah, well, branding. That sounds like some mindfuckery to me. Can't wait to unpack that one.
Okay, so let's break down this multi-product branding thing. It's basically when a company uses the same name for a bunch of its products, think Apple or Samsung, they slap their name on everything. Phones, laptops, TVs, hell, even washing machines these days.
Yeah, I get it. Use one big recognizable name and sell a ton of shit. Ride the wave of that brand recognition, right?
You got it. It's all about using that brand equity. People already know the name, they trust it, so they're more likely to buy new stuff under that umbrella. It's efficient, especially when you're launching something new. You don't got to start from scratch building awareness every time.
Okay, but what's the downside? There's got to be one, right?
Of course. If one product under that name bombs, it can take the whole brand down with it. Remember the whole Samsung Galaxy Note 7 thing? Those phones were catching fire. Talk about a PR nightmare. It definitely hurt Samsung's image, even for their other products.
Ouch. Talk about getting burned. So what's the opposite of this multi-product thing when a company doesn't want to put all its eggs in one basket?
That would be individual branding. Basically, each product gets its own unique name. It's like creating a whole new identity for each thing you sell.
Sounds like a lot of work. Why would a company bother?
It can be a lot of work, yeah. But it's a good way to target different markets, different types of people. Think about Unilever. They've got a zillion brands, each one aimed at a specific niche. Dove for soap Axe, for body spray. Ben & Jerry's for ice cream. You get the picture.
Right. So like if Axe tried to sell soap, it would be kind of weird. It wouldn't fit their whole image.
Exactly. It wouldn't line up with their brand identity. Individual branding lets companies build separate personalities for each product. They can appeal to totally different consumers.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got the big names covering everything, and then the companies with a whole army of brands. What about those challenger brands you mentioned before? The ones trying to shake things up?
Challenger brands. Those are the rebels, man. The underdogs. Not the big guys. Not yet, anyway. But they're ambitious. They're innovative. And a lot of times, they've got something to prove. They're not afraid to take risks and, poke the bear a little.
So like David going up against Goliath. The corporate version.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A great example is Dollar Shave Club. They came out of nowhere and challenged the big guys like Gillette with a totally different approach. Cheap razors delivered right to your door. And they weren't afraid to make fun of the establishment. Their marketing was brilliant, really connected with a younger audience that was tired of the same old crap.
Yeah, I remember those ads. Hilarious. Okay, so we've got the big guys, the niche players, the up-and-comers. What other branding tricks are companies using?
Well, there's sub-branding. It's like creating a hierarchy within a brand family. Like Gatorade has their G2 low-calorie line. It's still Gatorade, but it's specifically for people who are counting calories.
Ah, so it's like a brand within a brand. A way to branch out without having to start from scratch.
You got it. It lets companies expand their products without messing with their main brand identity. They can tap into new markets without pissing off their core customers.
Smart. Okay, what about that no-brand branding thing we talked about before? That one still kind of blows my mind.
All right, so get ready for this. It's this totally counterintuitive approach where companies basically downplay their branding, they use minimalist packaging, often without even a logo, and they rely a lot on word-of-mouth marketing. It's like they're saying, our product is so good it doesn't need all that flashy bullshit.
That sounds risky as hell. Are people really buying that?
Yeah.
Don't we all love a good logo and a catchy slogan?
You'd be surprised. It can be really effective for the right product and the right market. A great example is Muji. It's a Japanese company that sells everything from clothes to furniture to pens and pencils. Their name actually means no brand quality goods. Their whole thing is simplicity, functionality, and sustainability. And it works. People love their stuff.
Wow. So they're branding themselves as anti-brand. That's some serious mind games. But are we really buying into all this? I mean, do brands really have that much power over us?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's not a simple yes or no. On the one hand, yeah, brands influence how we see things and what we buy, whether we realize it or not. But on the other hand, we're not robots. We can think for ourselves, see through the hype,
Right.
and make choices that fit our values.
Right. But it feels like brands are getting sneakier these days. Trying to get into our heads with social media and all that personalized marketing crap. They're everywhere.
You're not wrong. And that brings us to a really interesting and kind of disturbing phenomenon, the rise of doppelganger brand images, or DBIs for short.
Doppelganger brand images. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
Sounds like some horror movie shit.
Think of it like the dark side of branding. These are unofficial, often negative images or stories about a brand that spread through popular culture. They're usually created by people who are pissed off at a brand, or who want to expose their hypocrisy or their bad practices. It's like the internet's way of saying, we see you and we're not falling for your bullshit.
So like a brand getting canceled.
Yeah, it can be a form of that. But it's more than that. It's about challenging the image a brand tries to project and showing the often ugly truth behind it.
Okay, give me an example. I need to wrap my head around this whole DBI thing.
Okay, so one classic example is this cartoon called Joe Chemo. It was this totally brilliant and subversive thing that went after Camel cigarettes. They created this parody of that iconic Joe Camel character, but they made him all sickly and dying, you know, to highlight the whole smoking kills thing.
Damn, that's dark. But I bet it was effective. Big Tobacco has been pushing their crap for years.
Oh, it was effective, all right. It caused a huge uproar, and Camel had to rethink their whole marketing strategy. It shows how DBIs can be a powerful tool, you know, holding brands accountable, making them change their ways.
So these DBIs are like the internet's revenge against all that corporate BS.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. But are they always negative? Can a DBI ever be a good thing for a brand?
That's a great question. And believe it or not, the answer might be yes, in a weird way. Sometimes a DBI can be like a wake-up call.
A wake-up call, like a slap in the face to make them see they're screwing up.
Exactly. Think about it. If people are creating these negative images and spreading them around, it means something's wrong. The brand is out of touch. Their message is off. Or maybe their actions don't match what they're saying.
So DBIs are like the canaries in the coal mine of branding. They're a warning sign that something's fucked up.
That's a great analogy. They can show that a brand is losing its authenticity, that emotional connection with its customers. And if a brand is smart, they'll pay attention to those DBIs, fix the problems, and change course before it's too late.
Man, this is getting deep. So after all this talk about branding, what's the takeaway for our listeners? Are brands controlling us, or are we in control?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think it all comes down to awareness. The more we understand how branding works, the more we can see through all the bullshit and make informed choices. We're not just puppets, right?
Hell no. We're smarter than that. We can see through the crap. But how do we become more aware? Give us the cheat codes.
It's about being a conscious consumer. Do your research, think critically, and support brands that align with what you believe in. Don't just buy into the hype. And don't be afraid to call out brands that are being shady or, taking advantage of people.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is.
Mm.
So after this deep dive into the world of brands, all the fascinating and often messed up stuff, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
I think the main takeaway is this. Brands are powerful. Yeah, no doubt. But in the end, we have the power to choose which brands we engage with, which brands we support, and which brands we say screw you to. It's about being aware and thinking for ourselves.
Damn right. We're not sheep. We can think for ourselves, make our own choices, and even challenge the brands that are trying to pull a fast one.
Exactly. And remember, a brand's power isn't just about how much money they spend on marketing. It's about their ability to connect with people, build trust, and deliver on what they promise.
Word. So next time you're getting bombarded with brand messages, take a step back, think critically, and ask yourself, is this brand full of shit, or is this the real deal?
That's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of brands.
And that's a wrap, folks. Stay woke, stay skeptical, and don't let the brands control your mind.